Hi, everyone. This is George and Garvin in the room again. This is our third episode of Series 4. We had a little bit of a preamble just before recording, and we were talking about disappointment. And both of us actually started saying, no, it's not letting the disappointment get in your way. It's just how you handle it and carry on and how you motivate yourself. And, we had a little bit of news that kind of could be deflating. We had some aspirations of getting into a festival that didn't happen, but that was okay. And we just found other alternative things to do to take our minds off it. I have a little thing that I'm doing, and it was lovely. I just totally got out of the zone. I was watching something, doing something, and it kept my mind off the other things. You'd mentioned something recently just there about somebody else you'd been listening to. Tell us a little bit about how you reacted to that, because you were more positive. You said that someone was bitching a little bit too much about certain things.
Now, what's interesting about that is that person's normally me. And what's starting to happen is I'm seeing how others might see me when I'm acting like that. And because actually I was resonating with the conversation, and I could so easily get into that bitching session, for want of a better word, or giving out about, or it's all them, it's not us, and no, if you use a festival as an example, you just go, right, they didn't let us in, how dare they, why we're much better than whoever. But we don't know who whoever is. We don't know if we're better or not. We don't know what the decision criteria was. Now, again, you don't get much feedback, so you get the standard, oh, there was such great talent, and there was so many to choose from, and we apologize this time, and maybe get back to us next year. But that doesn't help you feel any better, or because you've already done the work, you've spent 6 weeks doing X, Y, and Z, and 30,000 worth of effort, and 25 people involved, and this is what you produced, and they say, well, that was all very nice. Maybe come back next year. No, there's no bitching there. It's, we positively done something for ourselves. Other festivals are saying, oh, great, you're actually not only getting in, you're winning the best of, and therefore it's not to let others bring you down, and it's not to then go into this silo of bitching and begrudging and beguiling and all the saints in heaven. Why are people treating me like this? So get on with it.
Well, the interesting thing is that part of the counseling process is that you start to recognize in the other person their automatic negative thoughts, that basically they have these expectations. They think other people have these expectations. They think all these kind of things which are totally out of their control, but they come up with a complete synopsis of all these, devastating thoughts, devastating events, and they end up crushing themselves with the weight of the stuff that they've only just the illusions built up in their own mind, and have caused an overwhelming, crushing object that they have to somehow get rid of. And I think that's where you suddenly start to realize, hang on, those thoughts are not the other person's thoughts. They're just the ones that you imagined and created in your head, and they're the ones that are now causing your depression or that feeling of low. Whereas it's nothing like that. It's quite often there was no thought in that kind of way. It's just, as you said, they've been overwhelmed with all these people submitting because it's a really good film festival, and they've had to make choices very, very quickly to whittle things down. And it's just their way of coping with it as well. And in a way, what I was doing was coming up with something as an alternative to fill my mind that had a positive feel to what was going on. And that allowed me to not dwell on that thing, on that sort of sense of disappointment. It was more, okay, well, because in other film festivals where they kind of go, nah, we can't have you, we went, nah, that's okay. And the next day it's fine, we're in something else. And those are things that are totally outside of our control. What is in our control is how we apply ourselves to the things that we want to do now. And what was really good yesterday was I apart from the other activity, I actually spent a couple of hours working on our feature film script, and that was actually really good fun. I did about 14 pages. I added some extra actions in, which would help me with the storyboarding. And I'm kind of going, well, I'm really getting into this. You even got me swearing, Garvin.
Good. No, I want to see your vocabulary and the use of
one of the characters.
It's not all this fecking and
no,
these
I can't remember
pretend
if it was he or
swears. I'm not
she.
having pretend swears. There's no
No,
one
I
out there
don't.
using them. You know.
Well, this character suddenly starts to swear, and it was the scene where the boss lady starts to swear, and the big G's actually kind of, oh my goodness, and then he thinks it's okay for him to start swearing left, right, and center. So, but there was an extra line I felt was needed. But I started getting into, because the dialogue was there, I started to see the people and was, in effect, you had been hearing the people what they were saying. And what I started to do was to see what they were doing and how they were reacting and how the other people were reacting, and was starting to write down their reactions to what was going on. And it kind of helped develop the script a bit further. And it was fascinating. I was really just enjoying it because, well, look, he's doing this. And I started to, I was thinking about the other two, Ubo and Nips, and what they were doing when they were watching this and how they were carrying on with one another. And then when I started to think about the interactions between Big G and Boss Lady, because there's a mention of the mace again, and so I specifically put a medieval mace in there just to visualize it a bit more. And just their interactions, the dialogue was telling me what they were doing. I just needed the action reference so the actor knew where the stresses were within the dialogue. It hasn't extended the film anymore. It's just put it into context a little bit better. And it's just that working way. It's what I would do as an editor if I had the material in front of me. How do I get the best juices out of this? So that's what we were doing. I was just looking at it and seeing, how do we get this so that the scene becomes interesting from a visual perspective? So it's not just a dialogue piece, that there are actions going on. And it also meant what was happening was there were beats within the scene. I was seeing there's a bit here that we can shoot from that angle, but when we get to that part, they need to be in these positions. How do we get them from there to there? What is it we need to do? What do they need to do as actors just to build up something really, really interesting to visually look at while they're actually saying their dialogue and motivate them? And that came across because when I was doing a film, I can't remember which film it was, but I was making a film and the dialogue had gone really, really well. And in the middle of it, I was kind of going, what are they doing? What are they meant to be doing? And the daft thing is, because we're normally the elephant in the room, what I ended up doing was saying, oh, they're going to record these elephants on the other side of this hill. They're filming them, and it's almost in a parallel universe, and she's using what looks like old technology, but there's something sort of mystical about it. And I got them doing these things, these functional things that you would normally use, but they were winding things up, assembling stuff. You actually thought when they were assembling it, it might have been a sniper's rifle because of the things that were in, but it turned out to be a camera. So you were giving the audience visual things to look at, as well as listening to what the characters were actually saying. And I think that was an exciting part of that particular journey. And I'm trying to invest that now into the current film, any which way but out.
That's it. I'm going to stop you because you've just turned into me. I mean, I was looking back in time. He's just, I don't know, I should have timed it. I could have been 2 minutes. He was passionate about what he was saying. He was off visualizing herds of elephants over hills, sniper guns to boot. I'm going, the question, I'm not even saying the question. I think we're talking about a semi-rejection by the man from an unknown film festival, and all of a sudden we're shooting herds of elephants. But I mean, you can see where,
which is a positive thing. It's a positive reaction.
And now, I was listening to a lot of it going, okay, if someone jumps into the podcast, what the hell are they talking about? And if we take the film away for a second and went, it was all about those positive actions and re-motivating yourself to get on with doing something else and not getting caught up into going into this silo of self-pity and woe is me, because that I could feed that elephant. That's an elephant. That's the sort of elements we're talking about. The problem in the room, the issue at hand, and the issue at hand there might have been, right, had you only entered into one festival and you put all your eggs in one basket and you got rejected from this one, and we're talking about, I think the terminology I would have used in the past and an awful lot more of the older generation might be used to is, the man is putting me down. The man said no. Now, most of the man is now the computer. It's this computer says no, because you won't even get to a man, woman, or anyone else in between, because you're filtered out so far down the queue before that, based on AI. That's if they're that up to speed on a little bit of tech in these sort of places, which I doubt they are. It's just they know what they want. They'll recognize it when they see it. They know some names. We don't need to give excuses. The whole point here is we need to get on. We enter the next one. Don't worry, that's just part of the machine. That's part of the process. It's not meant to prevent us from doing and being motivated, but we can get deflated, demotivated if we give that time and strength. Whereas that's why I'm trying to learn from George and all the rest out there. I see many a part of my personality in the past was feed that all day long. Woe is me, pity, and bitch about it, give out about it. And every time someone asks you, how are you? Regurgitate it. No, one thing I said there the other day was when someone asks, how are you? They're not looking for that response.
I think, I mean, what I just heard the fire go crack there because it's quite warm in here, and I thought better put. We were talking about the fire in the last episode and get the fire going to actually warm you up and get you going. But I think, yeah, part of what we're trying to look at, and I think this is something that because we're getting a little bit older, we have the wisdom of experience behind us. And you've just reflected upon how you might have reacted in the past to certain situations. And effectively, those reactions would have crippled you into inaction, in many ways. Whereas what we're able to do now is because we can start to recognize it and recognize when those ideas are coming into our head, we can now start to come up with strategies of how to prevent them from influencing us in a way that's negative and start to literally come up with something to do that will, if you like, hide them, not necessarily hide them, but basically push them out of the way so they're not important anymore because they're not actually going to affect how we go forward and what we're going to do. And those are the things that I think are really important because quite often it's if we dwell on the negatives too much, we effectively stop working. We'll end up curling up in the corner and hiding underneath the table. I can see one there, you see, in the background. I'm just imagining Garvin sort of curling up there, sort of feeling rejected in that very, very small space and kind of going, how on earth did he get underneath that table? He's a big fella. But those ways of thinking can actually get the impossible of making someone go under a small table that is far, far smaller than their size. But likewise, if we can turn it around and start to recognize those things, we can do the other impossible, what is perceived to be impossible, and start to break down those walls that are actually hemming us in. I was actually listening to Pink Floyd, The Wall, some of the songs from there, and it reminds me of that. Even like 40 years ago when that came out, they were talking about being hemmed in by a wall and how to break that wall down. We're doing the same thing. Those perceived walls or ceilings, they're only perceptions. We just need to keep on going. And I think if we keep on doing, like I mentioned in the last podcast that I was doing these rosary beads, forget about the rosary beads, but people were suddenly saying, can I buy them? Can I buy it? I'm not even trying to sell them, but I've already got people buying them and asking to pay for them. And how can I pay for them? And how can you get? And I kind of go, well, look, I'm not doing them to order. That's something I'm not doing. If I happen to do them and you like them, you can have them and the money will go towards something. I actually do believe if we keep on doing what we're doing with our film projects, we'll get the same reaction because we're actually putting in the effort and coming up with the results and developing a model that works really, really well. And as long as we keep on believing it and not letting those negative thoughts dominate our way of approaching this, and also the fact that it needs time, it's not a quick something that fixes something. The time that we invest in this we will be rewarded in some form or fashion, either spiritually or mentally or physically, hopefully financially as well. Not make us rich, but enough to get by and make sure that we feel a bit more secure. That's all we're looking for. It's that security side of things that we know that we're provided for in our older age. We were talking there about the machine, the TikTok-y things, the algorithms. And one of the things I'm beginning to realize is that if you start to reach out to the community that you have with it around you and start talking to them and they start talking back, that's where things start to happen. Just hit the microphone. That's where things start to actually happen. And you never know where it's going to go. And you know that from people that you're talking to at the moment. There are things that are kind of happening and you weren't expecting them. And that's a really good thing to see as well.
Well, maybe actually, I heard the word. There's rich and then there's enriching, as you said. So we're looking to enrich. I think I don't even know if it's the right word, but enrich our lives. And maybe there will be money in there. Maybe it doesn't matter because by the very nature of that happening again, you've already achieved like more than you set out to do. And like, and you also touched on community. Now, the weird thing about the TikToks and and all of these sort of social medias that are the algorithm is the machine is trying to take your time, your most valuable resource, and get you to feed it. Because this is now saying feed me, the machine, as opposed to feed that chatterbox in your own head. And now you're feeding another machine to try and find a community where actually you could actually reach out directly to a smaller number of people and create a community, as opposed to feed a machine with nonsense content to hopefully find an unknown someone. I mean, most of the time, that's what I was getting at earlier on. There's like, if we were rejected from one festival, then you can be damn sure 200 other people were as well, and they're all running around, going, "How dare they?" and "Isn't it a pity?" and "Where do we go now?" And we all go back to where we were 2 seconds beforehand. Yeah. Had they not got that email or that response, we were having a nice little day. We were working on what we were working on, and this is just a nuisance distraction, which, if we let it, will take up more time than it should, than it deserves. So it's the thing here is to become aware of that as fast as humanly possible. As you said, it's that game of distraction. Distract yourself from that moment. I think there's just things whereby if you start going into your silo in your mind of depression and anxiety, if you count backwards from 4, you've distracted the mind. The mind is now reset nearly, and now you can look at smell a rose and go for a walk with the dog and try, and then not the whole thing again is not to let it back in. Excuse me. You have to close that door on that thing and not bring it up again and move on to a bigger something that just doesn't let you have the time to be dwelling or thinking of that anymore, because this time is too important and has to be invested wisely. So that's where we are now, in the sense of we've so much to do. The last thing we want to do is give something which has no value time.
Yeah. And I think that's that. I mean, we've talked about elephants and stuff, and there was that little saying, I think we've mentioned time and time before, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. And that's the key thing with everything you're doing is breaking it down into its component parts and not seeing it as a whole, because you become overwhelmed. But start to look at, if I tackle this little bit, I'll get that bit done, and then I can tackle that little bit, and stop ourselves getting overwhelmed by what seems to be such a big thing in front of us. And that's what's been very destructive to most people, is that they just become overwhelmed by all these situations they find themselves in, and they haven't found a way of controlling. And yet what I'm doing to control that is I'm using my calendar quite a bit, and sort of going, people are asking for my time, and I kind of go, okay, but I'm not available until X, Y, and Z. So if you want that little slot there, I can give it to you, but all these other slots are now taken up. And one of the things that's really, really important, which most people don't think about, is you need to allocate time actually for your family, and also for your space where you do that leisure activity. And it may be that there's a 3-hour slot, but that's also crucial, because you need to rest during that, not just sleep, but you also during the day need to have like the hour for lunch, where you can just chill out and watch something or have a natter with somebody. But plan those times like we've done with our thing with the half-hour breaks, the 1-hour breaks, to make sure that people have time to either go and chill for half an hour or an hour, or have a conversation which they wouldn't normally have got a chance to do during the other more productive time. Those are essential, because if we're stuck in our own and don't get a chance to interact with other people, like going to the pub, which is what people used to do, because they could have a little bit of a chat and sort of, figure out, do aliens exist, and what was this other thing that's going on, and all these kind of crazy ideas that people could talk about, and everybody kind of going, yeah, that's a mad idea, but let's have a chit chat about it. And do you believe that? Do you not believe that? And all those things, it allows you to explore things and have ideas that could suddenly influence other. And it's in those moments when you've stopped and had a chance to have a rest, that all of a sudden these other little ideas can come in. You can go, oh, I could use that. Let's take that and model it into something and see what happens. And in our case, it's a film. In other persons, it could be a painting. And somebody else, it could be a meal that they've actually designed and wanted to, put out and share with other people. We need those times to rest. And again, I think that's funny thing is I've just been reading the Bible passage where it talks about why we need to rest at least one day a week, because we need to regenerate physically and mentally, and if you like, spiritually as well. Those are important things that are being robbed from us. And if we see it as an intrusion upon our being and on our interactions with other beings, I think that's an important thing to do, because that is somebody robbing us of a valuable asset that can't be regained, and I think that's an important aspect to actually look at. What's your take on that, Garvin?
Well, I saw someone just send a little message in there while you were talking. I've been trying to chase this person for 4 days now. Excuse me. I'll get a little bit of water myself.
See, but you want to have those breaks with the water.
Yeah. But what it was is I've decided, I think on our last podcast, to stop talking about it, just do it. Do the bit that's my bit that I'm responsible for, which might be putting people together or empowering an opportunity. Now, beyond that, I can bring the horse to water, but I can't make it drink. But that's where I am now. It took 4 days. I've said it was important to this person that the other person in the mix that I'm trying to put them together with, is giving of their time that's available now and to make that meeting happen. So this individual sort of, ignored it for 4 days, and now it's the last day and it's suggesting Saturday. And that's now the end of a productive week that's lost back into the ether that could have been put onto this project. And Saturday was, no, we said in the week, not the weekend. It's already the wrong day. It's already too late. And it's already used up someone else's time that was available and could have been given to it. So the one thing I'm sort of semi-annoyed about is, actually, he's not annoyed. I shouldn't even give it an annoyance. It's more the fact when opportunity presents, you cannot tell it to come back when it suits you. It doesn't work that way. It's a lot of factors are aligning to basically let opportunity present, but you have to act on it. Not only do you have to act on it, you have to grab it and lock it down and make it yours. Because if you don't, that opportunity will move on and be more valued by the next person that recognizes it. So you might have lost it totally, because you didn't give it the value of time that it required then and there. And that's the weird thing about stuff out there in the world. Opportunity does not walk up to you and knock on its door. Other people might have to put work and effort into making it happening and getting it to that point in time to then suggest and put it in front of you. And now it's those others are nearly being held responsible for something happening or not happening when they were just pointing it out and maybe inviting it in. So like there's some. No, that's another side of something whereby we can be feeding. Oh, whoa, we're rejected over here, and then there's the other side of the coin when you went, oh, I could have been famous. I could have been a millionaire. No, you couldn't have been unless you put in the time, the effort, took the risk, went on the journey, played the game, bought the ticket. We all could have, the could is a conditional, unknown, nonsense, nothing. We all could be, but the possibility and probability might be an awful lot less. And those that are because they acted.
The interesting thing is about ideas, because you're talking about taking responsibility. A lot of people want the rights of what they think they're privileged to, but they're not prepared to take on the responsibilities. And with ideas, loads of ideas just fly in and fly out and all sorts of things, and you're trying to work out which is the best one. And they talk about, do the ideas have legs? And what that really means is, if you took that idea and invested some time into it and shaped it and modeled it, is the effort worth it to move it to the next stage? And that becomes very important, because you have to test all these ideas and test to see whether they're going to work or not. And that's the kind of prototyping part of that process to see whether or not can you do something with it. And again, you have to be you have to be resourceful with your time to make sure that you're not over investing in something that really isn't going to work, and come to conclusions very, very quickly. So you have to set up process and procedures to test each of those to see which is the best one to actually go
No,
with.
that I'm going to jump in there and say
Well,
that's further along the process where you're choosing between options and level of going deeper. But opportunity is you've got to sometimes take a leap of faith to get to the position to take on whether you then go further or not, or whether that opportunity is for you. But you got if you're on a horse race, you don't get time to pick the ticket after the start event. You gotta be in there to start. You gotta jump and take a leap of faith. If you're not, actually, Richard Branson always said, if you don't know how to do it, basically take the opportunity and fill in the gap afterwards. And then you can always let it go to someone else. But you took ownership of the opportunity. First in wins. There's no second chance.
Yes, but I think that there's something very important about the two things that we're actually talking about, because the both processes are actually valid, because there are multiple. If you're open to opportunity, you'll suddenly see that there's a wealth of different opportunities that hit you. The other thing that's also important is that when the opportunity for the right thing occurs, you'll also notice that you get invaded with multiple other opportunities which are trying to rob you of the time to invest into that one. And so you have to have a mechanism developed so that you can work through those as quickly as you possibly can.
I'm 110%.
I think so. It's definitely agreeable. Yeah.
Oh no, they're not mutually exclusive things. No. I would have thought one was the second part of the process of the first. Yeah, you don't get to get that unless you have locked in the opportunity. But if there's multiple opportunities, then you have to have a ranking mechanism to make the decision on the right one. But sometimes it's here you go, I'm offering you a ticket. If you don't take it, I'm going to offer the next person. When that ticket's gone, there's no second ticket. So you could have took the ticket and offered it to the second person and sold it. You're giving it away, and it was yours to now take control of the opportunity and choose to go further in or relinquish. And that's really what I was talking about in terms of the particular one at hand at the moment.
Yeah. But I think also at the same time, wisdom says don't always jump in straight away.
Yeah.
Because there's that thing about angels fear to go where fools rush in where angels fear to do, and that's because if you could be tempted to take an opportunity because it's being blown up into an amazing opportunity. If you don't do it, you're going to lose out and you're going to lose this. And what I'm finding with all kinds of sales techniques at the moment is they're using that philosophy, that way of working. You've got to have that critical analysis, that way of looking at something very, very critical, weighing up the pros and cons very, very rapidly to see whether or not is it worth the effort that's going to be put in. Because I know that from my perspective that once I'm committed, I'm going 100%, 110% into that.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't want to hear is the other person that's offering me this supposed opportunity suddenly bottling out after I've committed, because once I'm committed, I'm going to see it right through to the end. And I'll actually be quite blinkered and go for it and just say, because I know that once I've accepted that, once I've taken responsibility of that particular project, I'm going to make sure I see it all the way to the bitter end.
Actually, I really like that, because that's resonating again with what we were saying earlier in the week and even in the previous podcast. It's a case of, I mentioned I went down, I've been talking about something for 5 years. I don't know what it is in my mind. I got multiple variations of what it can be. But the common factor of it all comes back to it has to be of a scale and size worthy of a story. And it's not the scale and size worthy of a story, but more worthy of your time and commitment to a level of all in. Yeah. And the all in is not all in, wide and in terms of a time and effort and money. It's more a journey worth starting and has a purpose and it's trying to come into being. And I know this is let's say call it Project 52 for a second, for want of a better word, and go, it's not a separate thing. It's actually one and part of the new me of the time of 52 years of age. That was the initial conversation was, well, I need to have a new story so I can distract myself at a level of size to move beyond the past person function I was of accountant. So if you're all in on, now it's these projects,
Yeah.
was what I was really looking for was let's say an art project, a story project, a film project, and all creative projects, and the same people really involved in the journey, because they're not separate pieces. They're all stories of the journey you're going on, and it was my understanding of trying to direct content in this unknown social media space of what content story can I create worthy of following our journey, as opposed to meaningless ads and bits of nothing that you're putting out there to feed the algorithm. Whereas what it really is a reflection of, it's okay to try something new, something different that's maybe a bit beyond you and your skill set of the time, but give it time and effort. It doesn't have to be today, tomorrow, and all the rest of it. But when you start, go all in enough to look as if it's progressing and will get to completion in its own time.
What's interesting about that is, because what my mind was going through at that point is that we have to learn within ourselves the art of being patient.
Yeah.
And it's because there can be frustrations when you're doing something and you know it's the right thing to do, and you're on a certain path, and there are lots of other people kind of trying to niggle at you to try and break you away from that, because they're thinking that what they're doing is more important than what you're doing, and they want to own you, because that's really what the idea of
they want to own your time.
they want to, but they want to own you. But in the way that they want to own you is as though you're a slave to their system, which doesn't allow you to any opportunities. It doesn't allow you to prosper. It just means that they can have power over you to control what you're actually doing. But when you're in something that's valuable, and you're valuable somewhere, and it's not
enriching and empowering.
Yes, it's that enriching,
self-empowering.
That's when you realize that I need to have that fortitude to carry on with this regardless. I also need to know when to have a break, to pace myself. And that was the thing. It was that word pacing, because if you don't pace yourself rightly, you can overburn yourself and fall out of the system already. So you have to pace yourself for the long haul. And this is like what they call it, the long distance runner. If you start to sprint too early on, you ain't going to make it to the end. So you have to sort of adjust yourself to the right pattern to work so that you can see it to the very end. And quite often that means learning how to slow down, to repace, so that you can keep within what is capable and possible. And you will see those things to the end. And then what it is trying to work out how to deflect and shield off all those other things that are trying to hit you to knock you off balance and knock you off the course that you've actually taken.
No, I don't know if you find it or like I find it, but I'm constantly, when I say I'm doing something or trying to do, and it could be our films and our shorts and our like you even giving me a little like sort of incentive or push in terms of encouragement in yesterday or the last show to go, well, you could turn this into a novella. It's halfway there. Now, if you had time, you could go deeper and fluffier, and it could quite quickly become a novella, which is another piece of content and another structure. And yes, I could, and I might, and I'd like to, and I don't know when, but it's not a no, and it's just not a particular when. But like when I'm talking to other people, even about that starting that project wasn't starting yesterday or the day before. It started 5 years ago when it sort of started knocking on your mind and start trying to suggest itself in what form it can, manifest. But at the same time, every time I talk to someone that I'm about to do this or just did that or ordered the other, they're going, why? What are you doing? What's that about? Explain yourself. And the strange thing is, then you're trying to explain yourself and your reasoning to them, and they don't get it. And they're trying to understand it. And it's not, I keep on getting led into trying to explain myself, and again using up my own time, because I may not 100% know it myself, to be trying to communicate to them what it is going on in my mind. Because I don't know the best of times. I just know this needs to be done. It will make sense as it goes. We will fill in the gaps on the journey. It'll be exciting. It'll be interesting. But I must learn to cut those conversations and questions off immediately, as soon as possible, because now is not the time to be explaining to others what doesn't exist and how it's going to and what it might look like at what time, indeterminate time in the future.
Well, one of the things that just came to mind there is that you're being forced to justify your productivity and the way that you're working. And it's only because somebody else is trying to judge you. And I think that's something that's happened with a lot of people, is that the reason why they're feeling negative, that's back to that rejection, is because it's so easy for other people to be destructive in their criticism what you're doing, because they don't understand what it is. They don't understand how long it takes to do something. We were talking at one point about perceived time and real time. And quite often, real time just takes about 4 or 5 times longer to accomplish something than the perception is. I mean, the number of times people say, oh, that'll only take you an hour. And you kind of go, no, that's a 3-hour project once you get it going. It has to be prepared properly so it can be executed properly so you can get the results that you actually need at the end. And that's a very important part. But going back to the judgment, one of the biggest problems I think we have is because a lot of people don't understand the processes that we go through. I mean, I've got somebody who's saying to me, George, why aren't you going out and making documentaries about this local area? And they've got all these reasons why. And I'm kind of going, because it doesn't work like that. That's not how it works. Oh, but you could go to RTE, you could go to BBC, well, no, they have the doors that will also with the gatekeepers and all that who will reject what we're doing. I know that because we've been down that road, and I can be consumed for the next 30 years just trying to get that single project to go through those doors. That'll never happen. Whereas I know what we're now doing has the potential to, one, sustain itself by producing the income that we need for the different component parts. And we can very, very visually clearly show what it is that we're doing. And they do have those component parts. And it's taken that 5 years for us to develop the language that we need. I mean, and it is a language, it's a process, it's a model. And if you think about it, most youngsters, when they're growing, when they're born, our idea was born, it takes them at least 5 years to get the comprehension they need to do the thing they're doing, to be able to talk to other people.
Getting those legs and arms coordinated, moving, standing up.
5 years, that's what, for human beings to do this. So in a way, we're at that stage where we've now got the comprehension of the process that we're going through, so that we can start to talk about it in a way that makes sense to other people. And I know with the film projects, it is doing that. The other thing may not be quite, but that's because other people don't understand what it is that you're actually trying to achieve. And they're prejudging you on a wrong scale. And that scale that they've got isn't the matrix that you should be using for the project that you're doing, because they don't have the comprehension, and you don't have the time, as you've said, to make them understand. And you don't need to justify what it is you're trying to do. As long as we get there in the end and can do what some people expect of us, our families specifically. The other thing is also, and we talked about this a short time ago, that managing your time so that your family does get to spend time with you, and also that the work also gets its time so we can spend that time doing, and the other things afterwards come in third place. That's got to be the way, because there are responsibilities that we each have, and the journey that we're on is to try and fulfill those responsibilities to those that we have made commitments to, which is the same language that's really going on. And I think in even what we're doing, the two of us, that commitment that we've given to the relationship that we're doing in trying to get this project off the ground, it's so critical that we've had to develop that. We've had to shift and work around and mold ourselves differently so that we can work in a more compatible way. And it's got to the point now where you're able to do certain things. I don't need to worry about that. I'm doing other things that you don't need to worry about. And because we trust, we've built that trust up to get that going, we can now deliver on the goods each time and get those things out. And we've just got another few more steps to go before the reality of what we're doing becomes clearer to everybody else.
Very good. Actually, it's explaining, that's the madness. It's a game of explaining to everyone. Well, we keep on using the language, to the man, to them, they are judging us, and no, we have to explain ourselves to everyone else. And no, I have no idea who these people are. Now, we have avatars in mind of what a perfect customer might look like, or a friend, from the friends you have, who a similar friend could be, in terms of you recognize personality traits or actions or subjects they talk about. But ultimately, this they and the him and it and the machine, and it's the weird thing is we don't have to explain ourselves to any of it, to anyone. We keep that. That's the weakness where we find ourselves talking. Don't mind talking to the universe, but explaining ourselves to it as a whole other animal. We don't need to, But if we want to communicate to a particular subset of it, then we identify who they are, where they are, when they are, and we get our language and we communicate to them. That's coming. That will be there. But in the meantime, I'm giving up explaining myself. I'm a whole doctoral thesis to most analysts out there. I could never. I can't explain myself to me. I've no hope in explaining myself to others. But I mean, others watch by whoever the others are. People watch others and give them personalities without ever talking to them and go, how dare they, or look at them and I'm as good as, if not better. Oh, and well, I wish I had what they have, but we've no idea what they went through to get it. We all assumed they got it for nothing. There was no work involved, no nosebleed this, no 25-hour days. An awful lot of people we want the results, we want the rewards, we don't want the responsibility, we don't want the risk. And none of that, very rarely might be an outlier, but the majority of the time, you get what you deserve. It's not that we're being judged. The only judge in the room should be ourselves, and it shouldn't be judged red. It should be just a mere, judging. Are we using, our energy and resources, as best we can? And even if you don't want to, there's no one should hold you account. Maybe other than other parts of the family that you got to take care of or want to take care of, and that might be that's back to your responsibility. Yes, yeah. But beyond that, there's you don't worry about others judging you. They're nothing in the scheme of things, beyond what the power you give them.
Well, there was a poster that I was looking at in the counseling room that somebody put up on the wall, and it was about what's in control, what you're in control of, and what you're not in control of. And a lot of what we've been talking about is the things that we're not in control of. We can't control the past. We can't control the future. We can't control the other way, any way that people think about us. And especially if they've got their own prejudices that are basically biasing their mind, because they've brought a whole baggage of other stuff that in the way that the lenses that they use to look at the world around them. And we have no way of changing that. You said earlier on, you can take the horse to water, but you can't let it drink unless it has the mind to do so. And those are things that I think are really, really important. So one of the reasons why I'm liking what we're doing and have done is the way that you break things down into its component parts. You've got that wall to your right, is it probably now? To your right, that has a lot of things all marked out that basically gives you step by step how you can achieve the goals that we're trying to do. And I know that in the past, when I've been working on my films, if I broke it down into its component parts, I knew how much effort I needed to do each bit and how we could sew it together to make the whole. And that was an important part of that process. And also to give yourself times to have a break. So we're working, the reason why we're working together quite well is because we have a similar philosophy and approach to how to break things down and do things. And there is a certain sense of critical analysis. And because of that critical analysis and reflection, we've both been on a journey of adapting as need be, because each other is seeing blind spots that the individual can't see. And it's been helping us to just get a different angle on things so that we can see the thing from another way of looking. And that's been very useful. It's been good. It's helped me. I mean, some people have said that before I was a perfectionist or a workaholic. And it was trying to work out, how do you do enough without being overly critical about what you're doing? And that 80-20 thing that we talked about many, many shows ago is a really useful principle, because we have been achieving that 80% on a top notch all the time. But to spend another, maybe 4 or 5 times the effort that we got that 80% to try and get that last 20 isn't really usable. And we've even adapted and changed the way we do these podcasts, because when we were doing the ones that 130, we were recording everything by 2 cameras, trying to upload the whole thing. It took nearly a day for me to get everything back onto my computer. And then I'd spend a day going through and doing what would be like a vision mix with 2 cameras. it wasn't necessary for the level of what we're trying to achieve. And now we're doing this recording at the moment. Within the next 10, 15 minutes, we'll bring this to an end. And within about half an hour to three-quarters of an hour later, we'll have that ready to schedule when we want this to go out. That's a very useful way of looking at things, because it's taking all that effort away from the individual that thought they had to do that, which is me at this particular point in time. But there are other times where it's now given me the opportunity to, like this afternoon, once this is up, I can go back to working on the script and spend about 2 or 3 hours on that, which I'm happy to do because I know I've taken some pressure off tomorrow and I don't need to worry about that. So I can then focus in the now. So because I've been critically analyzing where my time blocks are over the next couple of days, I've rescheduled my days so that I could spend one doing this recording, then to go and work on the script. Tomorrow I'm going to visit people. I've let them know today that I'm going to do that. So I've set these things in motion so that I can accomplish them, and also taking responsibility for the actions that I need to take so that I can achieve the goals I want to. So today, my goal to go through the script is get another 14 pages. Another 14 pages will bring me up to about 72. So we'd be 72 pages through our 122 script. And that means I can start, if I can get a few more hours in the next week or so, we could be, before I go to Canada, we could be at the point where that script has done the next pass, which I can then hand it over to you and see whether you like what we're doing. But it means that we're fairly close to knowing that that script is almost shootable. It hasn't changed the dialogue, maybe a couple extra bits, worked out the action. I can now work on that script and storyboard it. And anybody that then looks at the film can actually start to see how we're going to execute this, which means it's becoming more real. We're almost at that point where we can have that first workshop. This isn't selling. This is just us going through a process of how we can accomplish the goals that we set literally 5 years ago. Yeah. Which is in parallel to your other project, which is important to keep those things going. So when you get to a point where you can't work on one project, you can then bounce over to the other one to make sure that moves along. And that helps you with that pacing that we talked about a short time ago.
It's layering. That's the strange thing.
It's layering.
Like I said, you're now putting, I think you used the language many a time ago, or an awful lot of people would use the same language of putting meat on the bones. We got a naked skeleton running around, and we're starting to give it veins and organs of all descriptions, and we might even put some skin and hair on it. There you go. And so there's meat to go on the bones. Now, then we will give it life.
Yes.
Which is a strange, that's the next thing. We're going to take this zombie, and it's not going to be Dead Man Walking. It's going to effectively, we're going to do pure Dr. Frankenstein on it and literally ignite it with passion and give it life. And I'm looking forward to that. The next level of layering, because it's we have the bones. We have actually, I think you're putting the meat on. And the next layer is when you start maybe putting the organs in and a little bit of, we're getting close to the,
well, that's the other
energy
people,
level,
isn't it? That's the other people. We will have a certain point where we've done as much as we can, and then it's what the other people bring to the project that will actually give that life and that energy. It's a body of people then that are actually working together to make this thing real.
Actually, it's not a body of, it's the body parts.
Isn't it?
It's which again, it's the heart of it, the soul of it, the lungs, and to breathe life into it. But again, that's any project, and that's what I'm saying. The Project 52 art thing is not. It's actually the same story. As I said, I wanted I can make a documentary, and I want to invite creatives in. It's a tool to meet the others out there in a language that they understand.
Yes.
At the moment, I've not been the expert in their subject matters, and that's what we're doing. We're building multiple parts of the same platform, which is a story platform. That now it's the others is who it's for, but I'd like to say, I want us, and I think we are going to be the God's glue of stories.
Well, the interesting thing about what you're talking about there is that over the last couple of days, I know you've got a sister that's an artist, and I've got a sister that's an artist. And for some reason, I'm being pushed towards, not separate from what we're doing with the filmmaking, but trying to do paintings that are expanded story, as in blown up storyboards. And and it's kind of really bizarre. But there's something in there. Again, it's
Well,
going to be
that's
done.
why I said I'm going to jump across you
Yeah.
there. You said that in the last podcast, and actually, that's what these are. They are 52 7-foot storyboards. And if I wanted to bring a full circle and not go artist into the artist realm of fine art, then the thing that should be up there is the minimum shots, the 52 shots that you get
Yes.
the film storyboarded at scale in this, and then these things can be whitewashed down or recreated into the next installation of story being boarded to go on a journey of being made.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's nothing saying that's not what it's meant to be.
No, but don't forget, in a way, the 6 images that you created in the early part of the 5 years became part of the backdrops for our podcasts.
Yeah.
So they had a story in their journey. There were key words that were in there that were very, very important. The other thing that other artist that you had that we showed his work in ND, that was also
Sid Evans, yes.
Yeah, that was also part of that same kind of journey. So in a way, the images have been there in everything we've been doing. So it has been running parallel to what we've been doing with the filmmaking.
Well, one was the story arc in the sense of our story of the 50 Jokers Wild concept. The other was just a reminder of the scale. And it's exactly where I was going to put these things. And all of a sudden they were there, but they're not necessarily the subject matter. They're gorgeous subject matter, but they're not my subject matter. But what they are is the right scale to be the example of what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And actually the scale that's on it is full life drawing, singular individual or something. I would like to think, if we were to do a 52 story, singular images that would be part of the 1800 we're about to do, that are the story arc of the film in its entirety. I don't know what I don't even know what the language is. I'm just saying, but if that was there, then effectively you now have turned, that feature into an installation.
Yes. I mean, in a way, we've been doing about 180 shots per film so far. So really you're talking about 6 times that is the feature film. So whatever 180s are.
I think it's nearly coming in at 14 to 15. I mean, strange enough, it probably will come into the 1400, 1500 mark of shots.
Yeah.
But immediately you start saying that there's an overwhelming, work if you start drowning the number of shots that could be to the storyboard.
Let's just go back a bit, because one of the things that I started to do with scripts was I suddenly started to realize that there are 45 moments, but if there's 52 moments in a script and we use that as part of what we're looking for then is an image that represents that beat or that moment in the film.
That's it.
The 52.
And it might not be, it might be 140 scenes or 120 scenes. It might be one for every 2, but there's something that effectively is the encompassing movement of the next, because that's a standalone something that jumped out in that beat.
Well, I think because when I'm going off to write my script, the feature film script, I know that the first thing I'll do is draw a timeline and I'll break it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it into 52 parts, not 45 parts.
I'm saying right now, without going any further, based on manifestation and the universe, in a couple of weeks' time, these things will all be built. And in about 4 weeks' time, I wouldn't be surprised if you came back from Canada with 1,800 little or 1,600 little images. Yeah. And if what we picked was a beat from each one and picked 52 and figured out using AI how to blow them up,
yes,
then there's nothing to say this is not the first pass and a methodology of possibly financing the movie through pre-selling and installation.
Well, I
have no idea. I'm just making up this language.
But that's the beauty of this. It's the idea, the concept has just come through. We don't know necessarily at this moment how to execute it, but there's something in there. We can visualize. I think that's the important thing. If we can visualize what that is at some point, and it may be a bit foggy at the moment, but there is the framework is there of the concept that you have, and you can see this thing. You could probably see the people walking around looking at the stuff. And you're starting to create that moment.
Exactly. If you thought of spending a few £1,000 on an ad, it might be no more than that it's a unique way of pitching the actual, the pitch for the film. I've not, but the whole thing is listen to the universe, listen to your mind, bring things into being. What I'm trying to bring in is I said, we're trying to bring in is a templatable structures that are sustainably multi-usable and have multiple story journeys. And that are unique to ourselves, then therefore become our method of communicating and storytelling, as opposed to keeping falling into everyone else's their line and
Yes.
way of thinking.
Yeah, no, I think that's important because that's been a distraction. And we talked about distractions, but sometimes when we've engaged with other people, they haven't come to us to talk about how they can work with us on the projects that we're developing. It very quickly becomes how they can effectively cuckoo into our nest and drive us out so they can force where they want to go. And you end up then spending years working on something else that you didn't really want to work on. That's why we have to learn how to shield ourselves from those external voices that want to drive us, who want to drive us mad in one sense, so that we can keep the sanity of what we're trying to do with our own projects and move them forward. You may hear the squeakiness of my chair as I move around a bit because I'm getting very excited about what we're talking about.
Well, as I said, in a podcast, there is a manifestation of a possibility of a tool set that can move forward and be used for many a film retreat in order to basically be pitching and surrounding the people by the very films they could be working on, by actually having it on the wall beside their heads for when we get to storyboard level.
Yeah.
We can actually clear all those down and have 52 of those particular beats there. And that's part of the brochurizing to sell the retreats going forward. And they're surrounded by that. Now, again, it's a what if, might be, could be possibility. It doesn't have to be. But there does nice, interesting conversations, which I like to be part of, as opposed to talking about who scored what goal last week, last night. That doesn't further anything.
Yeah, no. I think what's really interesting is that we're putting into action some of the things that we've had dreams about. And I think that becomes important because if we can visualize it, and you are visualizing it, we can make that thing become a reality. We can pull it from the ether and form it into some kind of physical shape. And that's where I'm enjoying what we're doing. And that's what's motivating me with the script, even just going and working on the script, is I know that once I've done this next phase of it, I can start to storyboard it because I can get into the heads of the people, the characters that we've developed. And again, once we bring those other people on board, they'll start to shape those characters in a direction that we hadn't even thought about. And I think that's what's really good about what you're talking about, because you have the concept to a certain point, but you're allowing enough room for when other people do come in, they can take it on a journey where they'd like to go within the parameters that we're actually setting up. So we're setting up parameters for them to work within. Exactly. And I think that's an important part.
The parameter was, even with what I'm talking about, a 7 foot by 4 foot, by the multiple of within a defined parameter that's equal for 52 people or X number of people or just ourselves. It's parameterized, but of a size worthy of storytelling.
Yeah. Well, look, we're actually coming up to a point now where we probably should close this. We may have been going for about an hour-ish, roughly. But I think what was really good was that we started off with the idea of disappointment and how disappointment, depending on how you view it, can either be destructive, but we were looking at how by implementing certain processes and activities, we can get over that and defend ourselves against those negative thoughts. We also came around to the idea that if you parameterize your time that's available for certain things, so you can take on board the responsibilities you have for others, especially in our case, because we're married, we've got kids, and there's demands upon us, and we have those responsibilities. We also talked about the fact that we don't have to justify what we're doing because the people we're talking to don't have the comprehension to understand what it is that we're trying to do. We've actually spent 5 years formulating the ideas that we have. We're coming to a point where we can quickly verbalize the process that we're doing, but quite often other people who have their prejudices keep thinking that we should go in a different direction. And what we began to realize is that We don't need to listen to the crowd, because the crowd will actually set us off on a tangent that could be very destructive. We talked about grasping opportunities when they come along, but also having the tools to understand which opportunity to take and grasp. Because once you do grasp it, we know that we're going to go 110% into making sure that becomes a reality. We've done that on the 130 podcasts that we've produced. We've done that on 2 short films. We're currently doing that on the feature film and the other prospective feature films. And Garvin's also been doing that with the 52 Jokers Wild image project, the frames, the 7x4 frames that he's enacting that part of it, so the possibilities of what could go onto that canvas can be realized within the next couple of months. He's achieved that once with 6 projects because they're on the wall for everybody to look at. And he's inspired other people to do other projects as well, which is also available within your own home to see that, those other paintings. But you formulated another way of working that allows people to see what it is we're doing without us having to fully explain and justify the actions we're taking. We know that the road that we're on is to try and fulfill the responsibilities that we have for our family to provide for their needs. That's the end goal. And we know it will bring us what we need to make sure that we feel secure as we get older and may be prohibited from doing some of the things. So we're still working on that. The same as if someone's got a full-time job that is that they're stressed out because of they're working to somebody else's demands upon them. We are setting our own targets and the objectives that we want to achieve, and we're putting them into action to make sure that they become a reality. Those are the things that we've discussed in this session. And I think we've come up with a positive way of ending this now. So I think that's a roundup of what I thought. What were your views to round up?
That's a mother of a roundup. My God, I didn't realize we touched on 19 different things, and we did. And no, what the great thing is, and I'm reminded of a couple of words you say on a regular basis from your learnings in the past, and I'm now have adopted as well as a bit my own mantra, and it came true in this podcast as well. Is I'm not going to explain myself anymore. We don't need to explain ourselves, but maybe what is nice is so basically show don't tell.
Yeah,
is where it comes back to, and that's what we're doing. We're going, this is what we're doing. Like, here's some evidence of it. I don't need to tell you about it. If you want to understand it or know more, go watch it, go listen to it, or be part of it. I mean, we can't really do much better than that.
No, that's it. Well, look, thanks everybody for listening to this. I hope this has been fruitful for you. It's been fruitful for us because we've learned something from our own conversations with one another, which is an important part of the process that we're going through. I hope you look forward to the next episode, which should be in about a week's time. We're probably going to let them out on a Thursday. Again, if you happen to like or whatever, follow it, share it. I'm sure there's other people that could do with some of the information that we're talking about here. This is coming from our experience, and both of us have at least 40 years experience each. That's 80 years of collective experience that we're talking about from multiple industries that we found ourselves going in. And that's something not to be frightened of as well. Go where the opportunity takes you and actually embrace it, take responsibility for your actions, and love the path that you've taken. That's me. Thanks very much, and bye for now.
Thanks a lot.